Hi, welcome to the Shepherd's Rest Dog Talk. I'm Cam, and this is Fern. Obviously, Julie's having a bad hair day. No, haha. Really, she's in Arizona, and I miss her dearly. This is episode 149. If you'd like to see our previous, it is, I believe, 54 A and B and 103 A and B from the last years. And actually, number one is also Pinehas. This is the beginning of our fourth year, completion of our third year. It is hard to believe that we've already been doing it this long and constantly still learning new little nuggets every year of this walk. So I wanted to start looking at a few things that we haven't necessarily discussed, possibly touched on, but maybe little different perspectives that I've seen. I want to start with, I should tell you this. The portion is from Numbers 25:10 to the end of 29. Some of yours will say 30 verse 1, but we end at 29:40. However, as always, when we talk about this week, I always feel the need to really start it at the beginning of 25 because it's the only way you really understand why Pinehas gets the kudos. So let's start by reading chapter 25, verse 4. It says, "And the Lord said to Moses, take all the leaders of the people to hang them up before the Lord, before the sun, so that the burning desires of the Lord turns away from Israel. And Moses said to the judges and Israel, each one of you kill his men who were joined to Baal Peor." So basically, the Lord is angered because the men of Israel, remember, this is the men of Israel. Remember, what are the men supposed to do? They're the army. They're the ones that protect. And they are driving Israel into adultery and idolatry by hooking up with the women and participating in this idol worship at Baal Peor. They're having sexual relations. So all of Israel is repenting. They are in the front of the tabernacle, begging for forgiveness. And we end up a little bit further where one of the men bring a Midianite woman and they come and basically flaunt it before them. So we have the Lord saying, I am not happy with the situation. Here's what you guys need to do. They're going to actively participate. So the bodies that were hung, they're already killed. Then they're hung up. That wasn't because God's like, oh, great, look at you guys. It was because he was unhappy. He was grieved. He's not just this mad. He's grieved. His wife is having an affair, okay, saying, I don't want you. He's brokenhearted. So when he looks upon the bodies of the leaders, these people who are participating in this adultery and idolatrous event, he's seen the obedience of those who live. He's not necessarily just seeing the death of those who sinned. He's seen the obedience of those who want to draw near. Don't worry about those that don't want to. We want to. So they are going and killing them. Just like back at the sin of the golden calf, right? The Lord had the Levites go out, okay? And all right, so the same idea. So anyway, let's look at verse 7 now. It says, "And when Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, saw it, he rose up among the congregation and took a spear and in his hand. And he went after the man of Israel and into the tent and thrust both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman through her belly. Thus the plague among Israel, or the children of Israel, came to a stop." Now you notice in verse 4, they're told how to help, for the Lord's displeasure to be able to come to an end. But it wasn't until Phinehas actually stabs them through the belly. Now, if you think about Numbers 5, where you have the woman, the woman who's cheating, and so it's the act of the jealous husband who brings the wife, right? And what happens? If she is guilty, her belly swells and she dies. If she's not, then her belly swells and she lives, right? And she has a child. But when I read the word belly, it made me go back to that event. Like, oh, wow. We have life or death of the belly, right? We have a child or we have death. And here you have By stabbing the belly, you're basically saying this will no longer be birthed in Israel. We're not giving birth to this idolatrous connection, to this false and improper marriage that's happened, this unity. Not going to allow it. And so I love the imagery when you go back and realize, yeah, a part of the jealousy in a marriage, and I don't use jealousy. The point of feeling that greed, that separation, and wanting that to be mended had to do with the belly. Here, mending that separation brings back in this thought of the belly. Just thought I'd bring that up. But if we go down to chapter 11, verse 11, which we're now in this week's, it says, Phinehas, son of Eleazar, and Aaron the priest, has turned back my wrath from the children of Israel because he was ardent with my order. That's such a weird word. We're going to say zeal. Let me just use the word zeal because it means the same thing. Because he was zealous with my zeal in their midst, so that I did not consume the children of Israel in my zeal. Okay, jealousy, zeal, those words in the Hebrew could be put there. So it could be jealousy or zeal. So let's say it's jealousy. Let's say that what happens is Phinehas, in his jealousy for the Lord, had the same spirit as the Lord and acted upon that. That's what stopped that plague. So what we really have is we have of God, satisfying. So let's think about in chapter 16 of Numbers where we have the act or event of Korah. Remember, the plague comes out and Aaron goes out with the fire and the incense. He goes out, he stands between the dead and the living, and the plague stops when it gets to him. Because why? We talked about this before. You have the fire and the incense of the Lord, the fire of the Lord, and when they meet, they quench, they satisfy, they match, they fulfill that whole, okay? So that's what we have here. Well, think about this. It's the same idea of Messiah. We have Messiah and we have the Lord. And when those two are the, however you want to put it, Yoveh, and when it meets, it's satisfied. That's why we must be clothed and walking in Messiah. We must be a part of that body. So in the time of judgment, when that meets, the plague stops right there. We don't experience the death because we are in him. That's what happens here. Remember, we have the Lord telling them how they can do it, but it's not completed. His displeasure is not completely removed until one like him, with the zealousness and with the jealousy of his, meets that it's seen as, okay, it's all good. And that plague stops. Now, if we look in verse 12, it says, Therefore say, I am giving him, that's Phinehas, my covenant of peace. And in the word peace, in the Hebrew, shalom, it actually has a broken vav. And we've talked about this before, that broken vav. What's great about this is Phinehas is the earthly. Yeshua is the heavenly. Phinehas couldn't be the complete fulfillment of the one who's going to have the covenant of peace, but Messiah is. Just like Phinehas stood in that gap with the jealousy of the living God and stopped the plague, Messiah stood in the gap with the jealousy of the living God and stopped the plague of death. The plague of death actually stems all the way back to Adam, where sin entered in is when death entered in, right? So if you think about it, this is all kind of ramifications of that one act. And our salvation is all ramifications of Messiah's one act. Another thing I wanted to say about Phinehas' name is in the Hebrew, you can take words and kind of break them up into small words. It's kind of like strawberry, you have straw and berry, or bookkeeping, or, you can break them up into other words. But Hebrew does this thing where it will break them up into different types of words that you can find. And Phinehas' name can mean mouth of the serpent. Or if you just put these two letters together and these two letters together, it can mean mouth of mercy. Isn't that interesting? Because again, Messiah, Phinehas, two sides of the coin. Let's think about the serpent idea when you go back to the Israel being bitten by the serpents, and if they looked upon the pole, right, it's life or death. But it both came from the serpent, meaning how you reacted to it. Did you look up to the heavenly, or did you look down at the earthly? So again, when I see this, I'm like, I love it. If you're looking at the earthly that can't do anything for you, it's just serpents. It's just killing you. But you look at it in the heavenly, it's mercy, the act of mercy. Same word, Pinehas. Just kind of cool to look at his name. There's so much more you can do understanding that and looking through these verses. But I'll give that to you to play with this week as you study. So let's move on to 26. Chapter 26 is giving us another census. When you look at this census, you really have to go back to Genesis 46 to really get the understanding. In Numbers 1, we have the census, but that one only really gives us by tribal numbers. It tells us that the families and clans are counted, but it only gives a total. That generation is completely gone. We know this from 26:65. It says, for the Lord had said to them, they shall serve, 40, verse 64. It says, but among these was not a man who was registered by Moses and Aaron. The priests were then registered the sons of Israel in the wilderness. Okay, so the point is that this census does not in any way count anyone except for Joshua and Caleb. They're the only two. But no one else. Everyone else has died. Only one left besides the two that are going in is Moses. He's it. That's it. He's counting with Eleazar. It was Moses and Aaron on the first one, Moses and Eleazar this time. So I wanted to point out that they are showing the clans here because I love this. No one whose family names are listed here is going in because if they have a family named after them, they're all way back there in the generations. They were either from 46 of Genesis when they were going in, and how many of those were still alive when they went out? Probably none. But let's say there may have been some. Okay, they're dead now. They're not there. But they are still honoring these family names. And I think about that with us today. We've got to remember to honor those who went before us that have helped us come into this way. You know, we can't be mad at them. Good and bad together is what still got us to this point. So when we look back at our history and go, well, they taught us wrong. Okay. But it gave us something still to keep seeking the Lord so we could get to the point where we are today. In this lineage, we also have and On. We have Korah listed. We have Nahab and Abihu. These people who, as for all case and purpose, you might look at it and go, well, their story's old. Don't worry about them. But the Lord still, in this final count, mentions those people because they're a part of the story that made Israel who they are. Love that. If you want to go through and take 46 of Genesis and 26, you can really do a great comparison of names and look at, there's a few that didn't make it through. Their family is completely, and there's a few extras that made it through that weren't mentioned in 46 of Genesis because it's where the family grew with another head. That sounds weird. The family grew, another clan grew while they were in Egypt. That was just weird sounding. All right. And then my last little thing I wanted to talk about is looking in chapter 27, we see this is the daughters of Zelophehad. And remember, their dad only has females. What do? Moses prays and he says, no, you give it to the females because it's going to honor, again, it's honoring the name of this man who did not do anything wrong, but because his generation was cursed and couldn't go in, he still received that same punishment as far as death, but he did not in any way transgress when the spies gave the evil report. So these daughters are given the blessing that they are going to be able to inherit in order to keep the father's name alive. But I want to show in 27:9, it says, and if he has no daughters, then you shall give the inheritance to his brothers. My point here, I just want to put out there, especially since chapter 30 is going to talk about the vows that a woman makes and between the woman and her husband, woman and her father, and how it works together. It's beautiful. And right here, we're showing how the Lord is like, yes, when you have only daughters, they are going to be permitted to carry on that name. Because normally the daughters go and cling to the sons their family, meaning when they marry, they take on the identity of the husband, just like us with Messiah. We take on his identity. We go into his body, his family. So that was the issue here with the daughters. But what I like is once there's no daughters, now we're moving, okay, there are no children. What do? It doesn't go to a sister. It continues on the male line because those males are already married and established. So it's just going to make sure it stays in the family, in the clan. It's not looking for a daughter who's maybe from the tribe of Benjamin who's married someone in Naphtali, and now you've got this family member that they're trying to find, but now, see, we end up with the same problem that you're way over there, you're already well rooted. What do we do here? Hence, it stays with the male heads. I just want to point that out because I find it fascinating, very interesting how the Lord provides for those daughters right there. In other words, he sets up to where it's going to go to them, and then you know if you're going to have it, you're going to marry in your tribe. It's already taken care of. It takes the complication out of it. That's, I guess, my point. Anyway, then the rest of the Torah portion really looks at the reminder of Israel. You're going in. Don't forget when I call you to commune with me. And I want to say this. As we draw near as the generation, if we are the generation or we're teaching the generation that will draw near in the millennium, we have to remember that the thing he's reminding them before they're going to go in is keep the invitation to commune with the living God. I say that to us too. We must keep the invitation to commune with the living God. And the great thing is, look at how many people are becoming now aware of this invitation for the Sabbaths, for his appointed and holy times. I love it. To me, that's just even more of a sign of we're getting closer and closer to his second coming. So I'll end on that note. I hope that you are able to really spend your time in the Word and be able to let that take you all the way through the Word of God, because it's like a beautiful tapestry. You've got to be able to really see it all work together to get the big picture. So I will say farewell. Thank you so much for joining us, and I will see you next week for Doc Talk 150. Have a fantastic week. Shalom.